I want you to imagine something for a moment. Imagine that life is like a giant scoreboard. Every day, the scoreboard resets to 0. You've got a chance to put points on the board through the choices you make, the actions you take, and the way you respond to the things life throws at you. But here's the truth. Most people don't like to admit, every single one of us has failed before, and we will fail again. Failure is an interesting thing. Some people treat it like a dead end. They think once they've failed, it's over, that somehow failure is proof they weren't good enough. But others, they treat failure like a stepping stone. They know it's part of the game. See, I've learned something over the years. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of the process of success. It's not there to destroy you, it's there to teach you. But only if you're willing to learn. Here's the problem. Most people don't learn from it, they repeat it. And that's where the danger is. Just like success comes from a few simple disciplines practiced every day, failure comes from a few small errors in judgment repeated every day. And those errors, they don't seem like a big deal in the moment. Skipping the gym just this once, putting off that phone call you know you should make, spending more time scrolling than building. They're small things, but here's the thing about small things, they multiply over time. Failure doesn't hit you like a lightning bolt. It creeps up like a slow leak in a tire. You don't notice it at first, but one day you look up and realize you're going nowhere. Let me give you a picture to remember. Failure is like planting a seed in your mind. If you water it with excuses, if you feed it with laziness, if you protect it from challenge, it will grow. And when it grows, it will crowd out every dream you once had. But here's the good news. Failure is not permanent unless you make it permanent. The moment you decide to treat it as feedback instead of defeat, it changes shape. It becomes a teacher. It becomes a mirror showing you where you went wrong and where you can do better. And I'll tell you something else. Some of the most successful people I've ever met are not the ones who avoided failure. They're the ones who failed the most, but refused to quit. So here's my challenge to you. The next time you fail, don't waste it. Don't bury it under excuses. Study it, break it apart. Ask yourself, what's the lesson here? What will I do differently next time? Because the truth is, if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting what you've always gotten. Failure will visit all of us. But whether it's your executioner or your instructor, that choice is yours. Failure will visit all of us. But whether it's your executioner or your instructor, that choice is yours. You see, failure isn't in a rush. It doesn't have to come all at once. It's patient. It's willing to sit in the background, letting small habits shape your destiny until one day you realize it's been quietly building its case against you. The little compromises, the skipped disciplines, the promises to yourself that you've broken, they all pile up like unseen debt, and eventually the bill arrives. But here's something you need to know. Failure is never final until you decide to stop trying. You can fall 1,000 times and still get back up one more time, and that one more time can change everything. I've met people who have been bankrupt, rejected, embarrassed, betrayed, and yet they still kept moving forward. And I've met others who never had a major setback, but the first little obstacle they hit, they quit. The difference isn't luck, it's mindset. The truth is, most people are not destroyed by failure itself. They're destroyed by what they say to themselves after failure. They let it rewrite their identity. They stop saying, I failed, and start saying, I am a failure. And the moment you accept that as your identity, you stop fighting, you stop reaching, you stop risking. Think about this. A child learning to walk will fall hundreds of times before they take their first steps. But no one tells them to stop. No one says, well, walking isn't for you. We cheer them on. We help them back up. We expect the falling to be part of the learning. So why, when we become adults, do we treat falling as the end? The difference isn't in the process. It's in how we see it. Every failure has two sides. One side is pain, and yes, failure hurts. It stings your pride. It challenges your confidence. But the other side is instruction. It's information. It's pointing at the gaps. Some people try to avoid failure altogether. They think if I just play it safe, I won't get hurt. But what they don't realize is that playing it safe is the fastest road to failure of another kind. The failure of never becoming who you could have been. That's the tragedy most people live with. They don't fail because they tried. They fail because they never tried at all. I've seen it too many times. Someone has a dream, a business idea, a project they want to start, and they say, I'll do it when the time is right. Well, here's the bad news. There is no perfect time. There's just now. And every day you delay, the fear gets louder and the courage gets smaller. Now, I'm not telling you to run headfirst into everything without thinking. Preparation matters, strategy matters. But at some point, you have to take the shot. And when you take the shot, you have to accept that you might miss. But missing isn't the end. It's the feedback you need to aim better next time. You can't hide from failure, but you can choose how you meet it. Do you meet it with excuses, or do you meet it with questions? Excuses say, "This is why I can't." Questions say, "How can I?" Excuses keep you where you are. Questions move you forward. I remember meeting a man years ago who had started and lost 3 businesses. 3 times he had put everything he had into a dream, and 3 times it had fallen apart. Most people would have stopped after the first, many after the second, but not him. I asked him, "Why keep going?" And he said something I'll never forget, "Because every failure took something from me, but it also left something with me, and I'm using what it left to build what's next." That's the mindset of someone who sees failure as a teacher. But let's be honest, when you're in the middle of it, failure feels final. It feels personal. It feels like the world is pointing a finger at you and saying you're not enough. That's why you have to train your perspective before it happens. You have to decide now that when failure comes, you will face it as a student, not as a victim. Because in the heat of the moment, your emotions will try to tell you it's over. And if you believe that voice, you'll stop before the lesson is complete. One of the greatest disciplines you can develop is the discipline of extracting the lesson before moving on. Don't just run from the pain, study it. Ask yourself what worked, what didn't, what can I do differently? Sometimes the smallest tweak turns the next attempt into the breakthrough you've been waiting for. You see, the road to success isn't a straight line. It's not even a smooth road. It's filled with potholes, detours, and sometimes complete washouts. Failure is like a construction sign that says, "This road isn't ready yet. Here's what you need to fix before you pass through, but there's another trap, and I need to warn you about it." Sometimes failure doesn't look like failure. Sometimes it looks like comfort. You stop chasing the big goal because you found something good enough. You tell yourself you're happy where you are, but deep down, you know you've settled. That's the most dangerous failure of all, the quiet kind. The kind that doesn't make headlines but steals your potential piece by piece. So I want you to remember this. Failure is a visitor, not a resident. It doesn't have to stay. You can send it on its way the moment you decide to act again. But if you invite it in, make it comfortable, and let it dictate your future, it will gladly move in and take over. When you look back on your life years from now, the failures won't be what you regret most. What will haunt you are the chances you never took, the conversations you avoided, the work you never started, and the potential you left untouched. Failure will hurt for a season, but regret will hurt for a lifetime. The choice is yours. Will you let failure be the end of your story? Or will you let it be the plot twist that makes the ending unforgettable? The choice is yours. Will you let failure be the end of your story? Or will you let it be the plot twist that makes the ending unforgettable? You have to understand, life will hand you moments that don't make sense. You'll put in the work, you'll do the right things, and still, it won't turn out the way you hoped. And in those moments, it's tempting to believe the effort was wasted. But effort is never wasted when it's invested in growth. Even if the harvest isn't what you expected, the planting changes you. Think about the farmer who plants a crop. Sometimes the rains come at the right time, the sun shines just enough, and the harvest is abundant. Other times, the rain is late, the sun is too hot, and the harvest is poor. Does the farmer quit farming? No. He learns, he adjusts. He changes when he plants, how he waters, and what seeds he chooses. He studies the failure so the next season will be better. Life works the same way. The people who never learn from failure are the ones who think they already know enough. They think they have the formula figured out. But here's the reality. Failure will keep showing up until you pass the test it's giving you. Ignore the lesson, and you'll keep repeating the same chapter over and over. That's why some people keep living the same year for 10 years in a row. They never graduate from the lesson. I want you to remember this. The moment you decide to learn from failure, you've already started winning. That shift in perspective is the turning point. It's where the weight of the loss starts transforming into the fuel for the comeback. Some of you have been carrying the weight of an old failure for years. It might be a business that didn't work out, a relationship that ended badly, a chance you didn't take. And every time you think about starting again, that memory rises up and whispers, "Remember what happened last time?" But here's the truth. The last time doesn't have to define the next time. You are not the same person you were back then. You have more experience, more awareness, more wisdom. Don't let the shadow of the past block the light of your future. I know people who have let one moment of failure decide the rest of their life. They avoid risk, avoid opportunity, avoid trying again. All because of something that happened once. Imagine if a baby fell once while learning to walk and decided, "That's it, I'm done." Ridiculous, right? But adults do it all the time. You have to make a decision, the decision to keep going, even with the bruise, even with the scar, even with the memory of the fall. Scars are not signs of weakness. They're proof that you survived. They're proof that you've been in the fight. Now let's talk about something most people won't admit. Sometimes failure isn't because of bad luck or bad timing. Sometimes it's because of bad habits. Habits of procrastination, of avoiding hard conversations, of settling for average work. And here's the thing about habits. They're small enough to ignore today, but powerful enough to control you tomorrow. If you don't take control of your habits will take control of you. And failure loves bad habits. It feeds on them. It grows in the space where discipline is missing. That's why one of the best ways to protect yourself from repeated failure is to build habits that strengthen you. Discipline is the fence that keeps failure from running wild in your life. Failure will also test your patience. Some of you quit too early because you don't see results fast enough. You plant the seed, but if you don't see the sprout in a week, you dig it up to check on it. That's not how growth works. The roots have to grow before the fruit appears. Sometimes the season of nothing happening is the season of the most important growth, the kind you can't see. You have to be willing to stay in the game long enough to let the process work. Failure isn't always a sign you're on the wrong path. Sometimes it's just a sign you haven't gone far enough. But I'll tell you what failure will do. It will expose you. It will show you where your faith is weak, where your skills are lacking, where your character needs work. And that exposure isn't meant to humiliate you. It's meant to prepare you. You can't fix what you refuse to see. One of the worst mistakes you can make is to ignore the feedback that failure is giving you. Every failure has a message. And if you're willing to listen, it can save you from bigger disasters later. But most people don't listen. They get defensive, they blame others, they explain away the results. But excuses are the language of comfort zones, and nothing grows in a comfort zone except regret. When you fail, take ownership. Even if it wasn't all your fault, take ownership of what you could have done differently. That's how you get your power back. As long as you blame, you give the power to someone else. The moment you take responsibility, you hold the steering wheel again. Here's another truth. Failure is temporary, but quitting makes it permanent. The only way to turn temporary defeat into permanent loss is to stop moving. Keep moving, even if it's slow. Keep trying, even if it's hard. Keep believing, even if it's dark. I've seen people crawl out of the deepest holes of failure simply because they refused to stop. And when they finally succeeded, the victory was sweeter because of the road they had to travel. Success without resistance is fragile. Success that's been forged in the fires of failure is unshakable. You might not believe it now, but one day you'll look back at your worst failure and say, "That's the day I started to change." Not the day you succeeded, the day you failed, because that's when you were forced to grow in ways comfort never would have allowed. Failure is not there to keep you out. It's there to see if you're willing to push through. The wall isn't the end of the road. Sometimes it's the training ground that makes you strong enough for the road ahead. And I'll tell you something else. Failure doesn't mean you're starting over from scratch. You're starting over from experience. You're carrying with you the lessons, the wisdom, the insight that you didn't have before. That's an advantage. That's leverage. You have to see failure as a tool, not a tomb. A tool shapes you, a tomb ends you. And the choice between the two is made by your response. I want you to imagine something for a moment. Imagine that life is a long road stretching far beyond what you can see. Some days it's smooth, the sun is shining, the wind is at your back. Other days it's rough, filled with potholes, blocked by walls, and every step feels heavier than the last. On this road you will meet many things: opportunity, challenge, joy, and pain. But sooner or later, you will meet failure. And here's the truth. Failure is not a stranger. It's not some rare, unfortunate accident that happens only to the unlucky. No, failure is a traveler that visits everyone's road. It doesn't knock on just a few doors, it knocks on all doors. It's not a question of if you'll meet failure. It's a question of when, and more importantly, how you will respond when it shows up. I learned early on that failure is one of life's most consistent teachers. The problem is, most people don't like the lessons it gives. We want success without the struggle. We want progress without setbacks. But life doesn't work that way. Just like a strong tree needs wind to grow deeper roots, a strong person needs challenges to grow deeper character. The difference between those who succeed and those who give up is not that the successful avoided failure, it's that they treated failure differently. They understood something simple yet profound. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of the process of success. You see, failure is like a mirror. It shows you things about yourself you wouldn't otherwise see. It shows you where your preparation was lacking, where your habits were weak, where your thinking was small, and it does this without apology. Failure doesn't soften the truth. It gives it to you raw, unfiltered, and often when you least want to hear it. And here's the danger. If you see that reflection and decide you don't like what you see, you might smash the mirror instead of changing yourself. You might run from the lesson instead of learning it. And when you do that, failure will visit you again and again and again until you finally face the truth it's trying to show you. Now, let me tell you something most people don't realize. Failure rarely happens in one big dramatic moment. More often, it's the result of small errors in judgment repeated every day. It's skipping the little things that matter. It's postponing that call, avoiding that conversation, neglecting that habit just once. But then just once turns into just again and then into just always. Success works the same way, only in the opposite direction. It's not usually one big leap that changes everything. It's a few simple disciplines practiced every day. The hard part? Both success and failure feel almost the same in the moment. Doing that little bit of extra work today doesn't feel like it changes your life. Skipping it doesn't feel like it ruins your life. But over time, the gap between those two choices becomes a canyon. Failure will test your patience. It will ask you, are you willing to keep going even when there's no sign that you're making progress? Because here's the thing. Sometimes failure is just the first chapter of a story you haven't finished writing. But most people close the book before the ending ever arrives. I've seen this happen over and over. Someone starts with fire in their eyes, energy in their voice, and then they hit the first setback. The sale doesn't close. The business loses money. The relationship hits trouble. And suddenly, all that excitement turns into doubt. Doubt turns into hesitation. Hesitation turns into quitting. And quitting turns temporary defeat into permanent loss. But if you can see failure for what it is, a moment, not a lifetime, you can take its power away. You can say, yes, I lost today, but I'm not done yet. That's the mindset of people who win over time. I remember talking to a man who had gone bankrupt twice before he built a business that made him millions. I asked him, how did you keep going after losing everything? He smiled and said, because losing everything wasn't the same as losing myself. That hit me hard. You can lose the money, the job, the opportunity, but if you keep your vision, your discipline, your willingness to learn, you still have the tools to build again. The truth is, failure can do one of two things. It can break you or it can shape you. It can be your executioner or your instructor. That choice is yours. Failure will also reveal your relationships. You'll find out quickly who's in your corner and who is just along for the ride. Some people will disappear the moment things go wrong. Others will step closer. The people who step closer when failure comes, those are the ones you build with. And you'll discover something else. The voices around you during failure matter. If you surround yourself with people who only see the loss, you'll start to believe the loss is the end. But if you surround yourself with people who see the lesson, you'll start to believe the comeback is possible. That's why you have to be intentional about who speaks into your life. Now, here's the part that's going to sting. Sometimes failure is not because of the economy or bad timing or lack of opportunity. Sometimes failure is because you didn't do what you knew you needed to do. You didn't make the calls. You didn't put in the hours. You didn't sharpen the skill. And if that's the case, you have to own it. Because ownership is the first step toward change. You can't fix what you won't admit. The people who keep growing are the ones who say, I made the mistake. Now I'll make it right. The ones who keep failing are the ones who say, it wasn't my fault. Responsibility is the doorway to improvement. Blame is the lock that keeps the door shut. When failure comes, and it will, don't waste it. Study it. Break it apart. Ask yourself, what's the lesson here? What can I do better next time? Because failure without reflection is just pain. But failure with reflection becomes wisdom. And wisdom is the currency that buys your next success. And let me tell you something else. Failure will visit you again. Just because you've overcome one setback doesn't mean you're free forever. But every time you overcome, you get stronger. Every time you rise again, you build a resilience that can't be bought, only earned. I know some of you listening have been carrying the weight of a failure for a long time. Maybe it was a business, maybe it was a dream, or maybe it was a relationship. And you've been telling yourself you can't try again. But I'm here to tell you, you are not the same person you were when you failed. You have more knowledge now, more scars, yes, but also more strength. And those scars are proof you survived, proof you're still in the game. Failure is a visitor, not a resident. It doesn't have to stay. The only way it moves in is if you open the door and let it unpack its bags. And the only way it leaves is when you decide to act again, to move again, to try again. One day, if you keep going, you'll look back and say, that failure was the turning point. That was the day I stopped being afraid. That was the day I decided enough was enough. That's the gift hidden inside the loss. It can wake you up in a way success never will. So when failure visits, don't run from it. Invite it in long enough to hear what it has to say, take the lesson, and then show it to the door. Because your story is not over yet. And the next chapter might just be the one you've been waiting for.